Here's something most people never say out loud. Sometimes you know something is there. You just can't prove it yet. Someone's in your life. They text you, they show up, they remember the small things, and there's this quiet, persistent feeling that what's actually going on between you two is bigger than what either of you has named. You're not imagining it, but you're also not sure. And that in-between space, that's one of the harder places to sit. You can't exactly walk up to someone and ask, "Hey, are you carrying feelings for me you haven't mentioned?" That's not how this works. So instead, you watch, you notice, you replay certain moments, and wonder if you're reading too much into them, or if you've been reading them exactly right all along. What we're exploring today are real, recognizable patterns in human behavior, the kind that tend to show up when someone has more going on beneath the surface than they've let on. And the last sign on this list is the one most people only fully understand when they look back. It changes how the whole picture reads. Almost everyone has been here, at least once, trying to figure out if someone's actions mean what you think they mean, trying not to assume but also trying not to dismiss something your gut keeps flagging. People hide feelings for reasons that make complete sense when you look at them honestly. The fear of being wrong, the fear of getting it right, and still losing what already exists between you. Sometimes they haven't even finished processing what they feel, they're figuring it out in real time, and you're watching them do it without knowing that's what's happening. Understanding these patterns isn't about building a case against someone, it's about clarity, and it starts with something most people have noticed but rarely thought to name. Sign number 1. Their attention has a specific quality to it. Think about how most people listen, politely, partially. They're present for the conversation, but not necessarily collecting it. Now, think about someone who remembers things you mentioned in passing weeks later, unprompted. Not the big announcements, the throwaway details, the name of a restaurant you said you liked once, the thing you were stressed about, that you barely even finished explaining. They bring it back up casually, like it was never in question that they'd held on to it. That kind of memory doesn't happen by accident. When something or someone genuinely matters to us emotionally, our brain just holds on to the details. We don't decide to. It's not a choice. The attention follows the feeling. What makes this worth noticing is the selectivity of it. Ask yourself honestly, do they do this with everyone? Or is there something about the way they track your life that feels like a different category entirely? Because there's a version of attentive that's just personality, and there's a version that's quietly telling you something the person isn't ready to say out loud yet. Sign number 2. They act differently. When it's just the two of you, picture this. You're in a group, and they're perfectly normal, chatty, easygoing, treating you more or less like everyone else in the room. No particular attention, no lingering eye contact, nothing that would register. Then the room clears, and something shifts. They relax in a way they weren't before. The conversation slows down and goes somewhere actual. They hold eye contact a beat longer than the moment technically requires. It's not dramatic, it's subtle, but it's consistent. And the version of them that shows up when it's just the two of you feels noticeably different from the one that exists in a crowd. That gap usually means something. In groups, someone hiding feelings is often managing how things appear to others, maybe, but also to themselves. The presence of other people gives them structure, distance, a reason to keep it light. Take that away, and the feelings start finding their way into the room anyway. Not in a word, in a tone, in the way they don't seem to be in any hurry to leave. Sign number 3. They find reasons to maintain contact. There's a specific kind of reach out that doesn't quite have a stated purpose. Not a birthday text, not a response to your story. Something more like a meme that reminded them of a thing you said 3 weeks ago, a random question they could have looked up themselves, a "hey, saw this and thought of you" that isn't attached to any particular event or reason. On the surface, these feel small, and maybe they are, but they're also consistent. And the pattern they create, this quiet, ongoing thread of contact that doesn't need to exist, tends to point somewhere specific. People don't maintain unprompted connection with people they feel nothing for. It takes a kind of low-level effort that most of us only sustain when someone genuinely occupies our mind. The reach-outs are small enough to feel casual, safe enough to walk back, but frequent enough to mean something. Grand gestures get talked about a lot, but the real signal is usually quieter than that. It's someone finding small reasons to stay in your orbit when they didn't need to. Sign number 4. They pull back right when things get too close. This is the one that tends to feel the most personal when you're on the receiving end of it. Things between you warm up. The conversations get real. There's a moment, maybe more than one, where something almost gets said, where the air between you feels like it's about to mean something. And then, without explanation, they create distance. They're harder to reach. The energy gets lighter, safer, more surface level. And you're left trying to figure out what changed. Here's what's actually happening in a lot of those moments. The closeness triggered something. Not disinterest, the opposite. When someone is carrying unspoken feelings, genuine emotional proximity can feel like standing too close to a fire. They're not pulling back from what they're afraid they might say, or do, or reveal. If they stay that close a moment longer, the pattern tends to repeat. Warmth, then distance. Real, then careful. And each time it cycles, the confusion on your end grows because nothing about their behavior adds up to simple indifference. It doesn't feel like they don't care. It feels like they care too much and don't know what to do with that yet. Before we go further, look at these 4 signs together. The focused attention, the different version of themselves that appears when you're alone, the unprompted contact that doesn't quite need to exist, the pulling back right when something real starts to surface. These aren't random quirks. They're all doing the same thing, creating closeness and managing closeness at the same time. That specific combination, wanting something and protecting yourself from wanting it, has a name. It's emotional self-protection. And once you see it operating across someone's behavior, the last 2 signs land completely differently. Sign number 5. Your relationships with others seem to matter a lot to them. You mention someone, maybe a date, maybe just a person you've been spending time with, and something happens. It's not dramatic. They don't make a scene. But there's a small hesitation, a subtle quiet that follows, something that shifts in their expression or the pacing of the conversation that doesn't match someone who has no stake in the answer. They ask a follow-up question that doesn't quite land as casually as it was probably meant to. Or they go slightly quieter and then recover in a way that feels like a recovery. This is what emotional self-protection looks like when it briefly slips. Someone who's trained themselves not to show too much can still be caught off guard by information they weren't braced for. Your connections with other people register for them emotionally, not just intellectually, and the effort it takes to show that is exactly what makes it visible. It's not jealousy in any dramatic sense. It's more like evidence. Your romantic life matters to them in a way they haven't given themselves permission to explain. Sign number 6. They say things that almost say everything. This is the one people tend to understand only in hindsight, and it's worth paying close attention to because it reframes everything that came before it. Think about moments when someone said something to you that landed heavier than it should have. You deserve someone who actually sees you. Honestly, Whoever ends up with you is lucky. I don't want things between us to change. Words that weren't quite a declaration, but weren't quite nothing either. Here's what's actually happening in those moments. The feelings are finding their own way out, not because the person decided to share them, but because emotions under pressure eventually look for any opening that feels just wide enough. The comment is real enough to mean something if you're listening, vague enough to survive if you're not. It's a door cracked open, not swung wide. And the reason this reframes everything else on this list is because it tells you the feelings aren't just passive. They're not something this person is simply carrying quietly. They're looking for a way through. Every small reach out, every moment of closeness followed by distance, every detail they quietly held on to those weren't random. They were the same pressure finding the same exit over and over through whatever opening felt safe. If you've had a moment with someone where a comment seemed to carry more weight than the words justified, that's probably not a coincidence. And it's probably not the only one, if you look back. Take all 6 together. And what you're looking at isn't a mystery, it's a portrait. Someone who has feelings they haven't spoken, moving through the world with those feelings quietly shaping everything they do around you. The attention, the private version of themselves, the small reasons to stay connected, the retreat when things get too real, the barely concealed interest in who else might have your attention, the words that stop just short of the truth. None of these signs on their own are proof of anything. People are complicated, and one or two of these might have explanations that have nothing to do with hidden feelings. But when several of them show up together consistently, specifically with what you're likely seeing isn't coincidence. It's someone caught between what they feel and what they're ready to say. What's worth sitting with, really sitting with, is this. If you recognize someone in this list, you were probably already seeing it before today. You just didn't have a frame for it. The confusion that brought you here isn't a sign that you're reading too much into things. Sometimes it's a sign that you're reading exactly right, and the next move, whatever it is, belongs to you.